What is the biggest act of passive aggressiveness you've ever witnessed or done? Me. I can do this for you, but you're behind on your invoices. You really need to get caught up. Client. How much do we owe you? Me. Including this last job. It's amount. Client. Okay. I am confident we can get that to you by the end of next week. 3 weeks later. Me. Hello. Just following up to see where we are on that payment. Client. No response. 2 weeks later. Client. Hey, our site is down. Can you get it back up for us? Me. I am confident I can get it back up by the end of next week. Long time ago, in my first managerial position, I had a boss who got pissed off at me for somewhat ridiculous reasons. I was trying to plan out a potential project with one of my staff members and my boss overheard us. He assumed we were going to skip other work to get this request done, when, in fact, avoiding that was exactly why I was having the meeting. At any rate, he came in and absolutely dressed me down in front of my project guy. After shift change, I went to his office and he told me he didn't want me to make any decisions without running them past him first. So, for the next week, literally every decision I made I paid him first. Like, can Tom take his break half an hour early? Or could Sally have extra supplies? 1 week later he blew up at my co-supervisor at a staff meeting saying, seriously, you all need to be able to make some decisions yourselves. So, my passive-aggressive response worked just fine. Malicious compliance is so satisfying. I live in a house with thin walls and squeaky floors. My housemate, whose room is across from mine, has always been active at night. That's when he practices his singing, makes phone calls, and stomps around the house, slamming the doors behind him. It was a little annoying but harmless, until I started my surgery clerkship last month. This meant waking at 4 in the morning every Monday through Saturday. A few days before I was to begin, I spoke with my housemate and gave him a heads up, asking very politely if he could keep it down after 9 PM. In return, I would be as quiet as possible in the morning and move my morning routine, shower, lunch prep, to the evening. He agreed, but didn't actually change anything. 3 days into my first week of surgery, after one too many instances of our bathroom's door being slammed too hard late at night, I decided to move my shower to 3:30 AM and parked directly outside of his bedroom window. The car is old and the engine loud. It took just over a week of being woken at 3:30, but he's now quiet by 8. Some people don't notice how loud they are until the other person stops being quiet. For a programming class, me and some friends created a tic-tac-toe bot that always ended games in a draw. It wasn't designed to win, only to end games in a draw. The real game would be trying to lose. The best way to be passive-aggressive to a trophy store is to order a worst trophy shop trophy and then never pick it up. I like John Steinbeck's idea of getting revenge on a bank by depositing a fresh salmon in your safe deposit box and going away on vacation. It was at work. I bake stuff and bring it in for my co-workers pretty frequently. One of our administrators brought in some brownies on a day that I had brought in cookies. She took that personally and actually removed my cookies from the common area and hid them in her office so that only her brownies were available. So I went to her office, reclaimed my Tupperware, and told her I'd keep the cookies in my office till her brownies were gone. On the way out of her office, the systems guys came by like, dude, where'd the cookies go? We thought they were out. Can we have some? Of course, I said yes, and passed out cookies while half standing in our administrator's office while she stared daggers at me. This is the weirdest office rivalry ever. Duolingo sent a notification to my phone once saying something like, it seems like our notification isn't doing anything, so we'll stop sending them. Duolingo peed me off so much last year with its untimely notifications that I dropped German. This is a little specific, but a chef I used to work with was really annoyed at the other chef that worked on his section. It was a quiet Sunday night, so he did every bit of prep possible for the section. The other guy comes in Monday morning and spends 12 hours there bored shitless because he had nothing to do and company rules ban phones in the kitchen. This is so subtle and impossible to rightfully revenge. I used to do laundry at a funky mat in the UK. For some reason, they put a 15-inch shelf below the doors of the dryers for people to put their baskets on as they empty the dryer. On a very busy day, one jackass decided to fold his clothes individually in the shelf, instead of moving everything to a table and freeing up the dryer. To make things worse, he was minutely examining every item he pulled out of the dryer. A woman very nicely asked him if he wouldn't mind moving to a table so she could use the dryer. This elicited an astonishing display of profanity and rudeness that had me wondering if this guy had Tourette's or something. The lady realized she was dealing with an butthole and backed off. Rather disappointingly, I thought. She found another dryer and sat down again. A few minutes later, jackass finishes his folding, and still blocking the dryer with all the folded crap, goes to get a rolling cart to take his stuff to the car. Lady sees her chance and grabs it, opens the dryer door, throws in all his carefully folded stuff and feeds the coin slot. The guy went ballistic when he came back, but somehow, no one in the entire place had seen what happened. I love the image of a bunch of laundry room customers of all ages and races uniting together in silence to complicity frick over this douchebag and not tell him what happened. A couple of years ago, 2012 or something, I was in high school attending a computer science class. The exercises were so outdated that they stated that we had to hand it in on a floppy disk, so I did. When I was still married, my ex's parents' Christmas gift to us one year was that they offered to pay for me to have a vasectomy. We hadn't discussed anything, even broaching that subject with them. Guess they really wanted to finish tying the knot. Personally, I asked my girlfriend at the time if she would mind if I hung out with my ex and some friends after school. A simple no would have sufficed. Instead, she responded with, "I don't mind. I guess I'll hang out with my friend Eric. We usually get drunk and make out." My high school chemistry teacher hated my friends and me. We started it all by being high school idiots, but we were going to finish it as well. My friend would often crumple up his lab sheet and then flatten it out before handing it in. After doing this a couple of times, she said he would get a 0 the next time he did it. So after we finished our next lab, he asked to go to the bathroom. He takes his sheet to the library, crumples it up, flattens it out and then photocopies it, comes back and turns in the crumpled looking piece of paper. Truly inspired. Had a former co-worker that when writing his child support payment check to his ex-wife, he would address the envelope as, names changed, Heather Johnson Williams Smith Butler. Good thing she didn't marry Smitty Werger Yeager Man Jensen. I was working during the morning at the counter and we just opened the shop. Not even around 20 minutes has passed and this older lady comes up to the counter with her granddaughter and shows me her old battery in her hand with a pee-off look on her face like I peed in her cereal. I stare at her for a couple of seconds, and she sighs, pauses, and then says, "Batteries." I stare at her and with the politest tone I could muster I tell her they're just in front of the counter around 2 steps away, and she starts looking at USB sticks. I say in the most polite and pleasant voice with as much bubbliness as I could muster, "Oh no, not there, just to the left," and she spots them. I tell her she's got it, and continue my business. She grabs the battery she needs but then pauses and dramatically says, "You know what? I'm not going to buy these. I'll go to another store that will have decent customer service who will help me," and storms out while her grandchild is staring at her like a confused Bambi. I said, "Okay, goodbye" as soon as she said that, and she stormed out with her very confused granddaughter. There are harsher demons to care about in retail beyond a passive-aggressive woman who expected me to mind read and didn't politely ask for help. Besides, it was 20 minutes after we opened. I wasn't awake enough to care. My wife and I have been planning on going on a weekend-long couples retreat for 3 months. We lined up the babysitters, her parents and mine, set aside the necessary funds and waited in anticipation. The weekend finally comes. We drop the kids off at my folks' place because they are watching them for night 1. They can't watch the kids for the second night because of a play my younger sister was involved in. There was also a storm happening at the same location our retreat was planned. My mother-in-law is a fear-monger and told us not to go because she feared for our safety. The place we were headed gets storms frequently, and occasionally there is a tree that falls over, but that is about it. Anyways, she really doesn't want us to go, but my wife and I need a break from the kids, so we say we're going anyways. She then calls my wife and spends a half hour on the phone crying to her, literally crying, about not going for fear of her child dying and leaving her grandchildren orphaned. Sunday evening when we return we find out that she had picked up the kids that day at noon, meaning she had left them at my parents' place the night before, so my mother wasn't able to go watch her daughter perform in the play. We asked her why she backed out, and she said she was too stressed to deal with the children. She bailed on watching her grandkids for a night because we went on a trip that she thought was too dangerous, causing issues with my parents. Hey, looks like your wife has a just normal. Feel free to commiserate with others that are just normal. Sorry to sound like a bad infomercial, but you might find some support there. Back during my degree I was doing an essay about typographical trends. My lecturer and I had a disagreement about something to do with another project. Something about a display or something, I don't quite recall. I handed the essay on time but with each word successively in Arial, Helvetica and Gilson. It drove him nuts. When I was in high school we had an oil painting unit in our art class. Oil paint is expensive, so we were given really small tubes and told to use only as much as we needed. Well, we were painting a lot of fall type plants. Things like squash, gourds, etc. Needless to say, there was a lot of yellow in these compositions and most people used up their yellow tubes right away. There was this upperclassman girl in my class that was a total stuck-up snob and took every chance she could to throw me under the bus for some reason. I think she thought I was a threat to her because we were both very artistically inclined, although the extent of her abilities was just copying paintings that she found online. Anyways, we all kept our paints in show boxes and one day I went to class to find that my nearly full tube of yellow paint was gone. I look over, and sure enough, the upperclassman snob has it. I was pissed, but I didn't want to make a scene. So I went up to her and asked, "Hey, can I borrow some of your yellow?" She looks at me, gives me the snobbiest, most disgusting look I had ever seen in my life and says, "Only a little bit." That was the last straw. I took the tube and squeezed out the entire thing onto my palette. It was oil paint, so I was able to keep it wet until I was done with it. Hep. At the mall, sitting in a chair waiting for someone, a woman with cane walks up to the seating area and says to herself, "All the seats are taken. I'll just have to hope I don't fall down." Someone then offers her a seat, and 2 minutes later she says something about it being long enough and gets up and walks off again. Playing martyr was apparently more important than sitting down. I used to shower at work. To cut down on hauling crap back and forth I brought a large shampoo container to work as well as a bar of soap. I placed the shampoo off in an unused corner out of the way of anyone else's stuff. A week later the shampoo was almost completely gone even though I'd only got to use it once. I left a note on the shampoo itself. "Don't use my shampoo. Bring your own." A couple days later the shampoo was almost completely empty, so I pee in it. I filled the bottle with my urine then left it there. 2 days later I found the bottle in one of the shower stalls. The top was off and it was lying on the shower floor on its side. I never knew who was using my shampoo, but I have a vision in my mind's eye of what happened when they used it the last time. When I was in college, I was in a group project called Capstone where we built an entire enterprise network, including host, branches, servers, etc. Everything that we learned. Well, the 2 people that I was supposed to be working with didn't do anything at all. I asked my instructor if I could be reassigned or work alone, to which he told me no. So, I worked independently anyways. I made the network etc. But when it came time to present, I completely bombed it on purpose. I did no servers. I used basic DSL to the public internet for my only connection to the host and used free DNS to do my DNS because I cheaped out on static IPs. I used static routing for everything. No switching, no port security, a complete bomb. My group received a 15% on our capstone and caused my 2 group mates to fail out of the capstone project. That night I emailed a PowerPoint presentation, project documentation and timeline, and 88-page technical document to my professor, as well as explaining the reason I did what I did. He told me that this would be unacceptable in the professional world and would get me fired, but he changed my individual grade to 93%. Also, I work with one of the girls from my group now, and she's still answering end user calls all day. Muahaha. Granted, it would be unacceptable in the professional world, but given the fact that you made the professor aware of your group not helping would give you merit in the professional world, that would be taken much more seriously and you would never have been put into a position to bomb a presentation to prove a point. I had a math teacher who I didn't like, so I did my homework in the top tiny square of the paper where the lines met, showing my work and everything, just ridiculously tiny. I had a friend in high school, couldn't help it, wrote ridiculously tiny. If he wrote an essay it would be the equivalent of 2-3 pages on a single page because he just wrote so goddamn tiny. Drove teachers nuts. In a choir I directed, we welcomed a new tenor who had a great voice and added perfectly to the ensemble. The tenor next to him, however, was jealous of the new singer's ability and said, "If I had a voice like yours, I wouldn't think to subject others to it in choir, but would sing solo instead." My high school biology teacher would always give us homework sheets to fill in and hand back. I always folded it and put it in my pocket, and she would always complain to me that my work was too creased. Being the lovely student that I was, I learned origami, and when I next handed in a homework it was in the shape of an X-wing fighter. Everything we do in my classes is done online, but if a student ever did this I would demand they make enough so that I had my own squadron. Was riding on the bus at 7 AM after a 3 PM to 6 AM double shift. Needless to say I was tired as heck. Now, this specific route tends to be very crowded in the mornings, but my work was near the start of it so I'd always get a seat, and then proceed to fall asleep in it. So this group of middle-aged women get up at the next stop and now the bus is full. So one of them stands next to me and says, "I guess there are no more gentlemen in this world." So I did what my half-asleep mind wanted and proceeded to say, "Oh, I am sorry, yes there are. I am afraid seats is what's short," and proceeded to fall back asleep. Yeah, that was an uncomfortable 45 minutes ride home. To be fair, you really aren't obliged to give up your seat unless there's a physically disabled person. So I feel really bad about this now, but I was at a Subway, sandwiches not the underground train, and there was a bus of Chinese tourists in front of me in line. They took a while to order because they spoke mostly broken English, but they got through it. Now, I walk up and I hear the Subway lady mutter under her breath, "Great, another freaking chink. I'm also Asian." Now, I understand that dealing with a bunch of tourists who ordered in broken English is hard, but this really set me off. I proceed to order, being the most indecisive I can while using the most broken English I can, adding in random ching-chongs and ling-longs and every other ridiculous rhyming iteration of that I can, and just proceed to waste her time. Now, when I finally get to the cashier, I have a sandwich which has been remade 3 times because the sandwich lady misunderstood me because of my bad English and piled high with every single topping and sauce. I go up to pay and say in perfect English, "You know, racism really makes me lose my appetite. Keep the sandwich," and then I walked out nonchalantly, treasuring the look of pure rage on the Subway lady's face. That was brilliant. Good job. My name is Anthony. For 25 years I've had to do the annoying task of dealing with people assuming they may call me Tony. First time, no big deal. Just a quick correction and we're on with our days. Only pass I give is real old people because maybe the name reminds them of a grandchild they lost to polio or whatever. I don't know people's lives and I'm not trying to make people cry on their final days. Anyways, I had a teacher in high school that would constantly call me Tony, even after correcting her, and sometimes on that same day, started to just flat ignore her Tony calls. One time she kept saying it until the entire class turned around to look at me to see why I was silent. I did the ironic look back behind me to look at the wall. Last day of class when she finally started to call me Anthony, I signed my final paper, Tony. Frick you Ms. D. Only pass I give is real old people because maybe the name reminds them of a grandchild they lost to polio or whatever. I don't know people's lives and I'm not trying to make people cry on their final days. My sides. One of my co-workers unplugs the fridge because it makes too much noise. The office manager installed a lock over the outlet so you can't unplug it now. I hope your co-worker never has a family member on life support. At least twice a week I'm putting ads for hearing aids in the mailbox of the guy who lives above me. He's watching TV very loud 24/7. Last day working at a grocery store, my friend had a woman come to his express checkout line with well above the 15 item minimum. He was not allowed to turn her away by store policy, so he instead just counted every item he scanned in a very loud voice for everyone to hear. Back in high school, I had this English teacher who was known to be completely anti-fun. The first paper I turned in was too humorous. The second paper I turned in had too much personality. She pulled me aside one day and said this: "You and I are not going to get along at all this semester. You are too right-brained and I don't tolerate that absurdity in my classroom. If you don't straighten up, I will fail you." Mind you, this is because I put a touch of creativity in my classification paper. I was P. So, for my senior English project, we had to do volunteer work, a research paper with at least 20 citations, and we have to tie in a presentation of the work that was done along with a demonstration. I also found out that she was extremely allergic to cats. So, I did my volunteer work at the Humane Society, wrote my paper on veterinary work, and decided to do my demonstration of going through the adoption process and getting your cat spayed or neutered. Bob Barker would be proud. So, I brought my cat in for the demonstration. She had to leave the classroom because Mr. Tux was setting her allergies off. We could hear her sneezing and grumbling about how much she hates cats all the way down the hallway. She wasn't even there to grade me, so she just gave me an A just so I would take the cat out of the classroom. TLDR. Found out my butthole teacher was allergic to cats. Did my senior project on cats just to make her have an allergic meltdown in front of the class. When my son was still an infant months old, my husband would pick him up and do baby talk and be like, "Did mommy forget to do X and Y?" I was right there. LOL. I would then go to our son. "Is daddy too much of a wussy to say that to mommy when she's 5 feet away?" He finally stopped. I busted his balls so much about it. We now jokingly communicate that way to each other all the time. But now we don't curse or say anything horrible like that in front of our 2-year-old. But when he's not around, it's funny. Jokingly. At school I was once punished for running in the library, except I wasn't running, it was 2 other people, and I was adamant I was not going to accept punishment for a crime I didn't commit. Said punishment was writing a 2-page essay about my actions and why I shouldn't do them again. The essay that was written, the entire song lyrics to the Badger 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 song for 2 pages. I was then given detention after school and told to write another essay. Initially it started as a remorseful groveling about lessons learned, which after 2 paragraphs devolved into Badger 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 ad nauseum. Looking back, it would have been easier to accept the initial punishment, but when you're a rebellious little shithead, Badger 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 it is. I like to tell rude customers to have a great day sometimes because it sounds enough like great to where they don't notice, though I do get a kick out of stupidly passive-aggressive crap. I say Great Dane because not only can they not call me on it, as if I would say something so silly in a professional environment, but then I can also imagine them going through the pain of giving birth to a Great Dane. Biggest act I did? I had an English teacher I really disliked in high school. She was one of those grammar purists. I'm pretty sure if she knew I used the singular they she'd yell. So she drank like 3 Pepsis a day and one day decided to give up Pepsi to improve her health. I came in with a bottle of Pepsi the next day and drank it nonchalantly during class. I don't even like Pepsi, LOL. Not witnessed in person, but on a TV show. On the show Hoarding, Buried Alive, there was a woman named Sherry who had hoarded trash in her home to the point there was a severe infestation of cockroaches and black widow spiders. So basically everything had to be thrown away. She took zero responsibility for how her home had gotten that way and instead blamed her 20 pseudo-illnesses and her lazy children for the state of things. One of the ladies who was helping with the cleanup asked her if it was okay to throw away a wicker bowl that was covered in roach fesses. She replied, "That's fine. My mother can just come climb out of her grave and make more." Biggest one I've done? In high school, English teacher hated Wikipedia with a passion, saying it's unreliable and anyone can edit it. So for my research paper I proved Wikipedia was a reliable source and not everyone can edit pages. She hated it so much and constantly asked me to write about something different. My mom could probably win this Ask Reddit easily. Off the top of my head, The biggest is probably the long con she's been playing with my dad for roughly 40 years. Apparently on their honeymoon to Greece in the early 70s, she vaguely mentioned that she might want to ride a camel. They were in an area where this was possible. Knowing my mother, it's highly unlikely that she directly asked him or anyone else where she could ride one. She never got to ride one while they were there. Since then, for the next 40 years and beyond, we have all been treated to a story about how my dad wouldn't allow her to ride a camel in Greece. They even went back to Greece a few years ago. He was so sick of the story, he asked her if she wanted to finally do it. She wouldn't do it. Sigh. I've always wanted to ride a camel. I guess I can't now. I'm convinced that she likes having the story and supposed leverage more than she ever wanted to ride a dang camel. This is just one story. I haven't even gotten to my wedding. Her health. No one cares about me anyway. Her parents' health. Her overall relationship with my dad. He can go do his hobby. It's okay. I'll just wait in the car for 3 hours while he does it. All topics are opportunities for her to show you that she is the one true victim. But it's okay. Don't worry about me, as long as you got what you wanted. It sounds like she's narcissistic. Always the martyr for attention. I hate people like that. My mate in school made the passing remark in English class. I wonder if literary greats like Shakespeare learned how to write through Bull's assignments in pretentious private schools. Teacher overheard him, smiled, kneeled down next to him and said, "That is a really thought-provoking question. Name. I want you to write on that as your essay topic for the semester." He wrote it and she gave him a 90. Back and forth passive aggression. My college roommates never did their dishes in a timely manner, so anytime I'd wash their dishes I would say very loudly, "Oh man, this is so hard. No wonder the dishes never get done." Man bro, seriously, I now understand why you leave the frying pan in the sink for hours. My hands are hurting. Damn. Dudes, you guys, IDK if I can go to class after this. Today, I was walking up to a campus bus with two guys I didn't know. One got on, and the next guy went to follow when the driver closed the door on his hand. He managed to pull it out, and the front door was still open, so I went up there and the driver closed that door on my hand. I yelled at her, and she just pointed at her watch, and then sat there for like 30 seconds, writing on her clipboard and then drove off. She could have let us on, but no. I called the supervisor for campus though, and it turns out that she has gotten a lot of complaints for that. They are supposed to let all people on safely. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.